You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. This is our final show of 2024, and we bring you our annual holiday wine and champagne recommendations from the experts. We'll talk to Ryan Bailey from Cato in Los Angeles, Yannick Benjamin from Wine on Wheels and Beaupierre Wines and Spirits in New York City, and the inimitable Aldo Sohm from Le Bernardin and Aldo Sohm Wine Bar, also in New York City. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio. We bring wine to the people. We are talking to Aldo Sohm of Le Bernardin and Aldo Sohm Wine Bar at his eponymous wine bar in New York City. Welcome back to the Grape Nation, Aldo.
Thank you for having me, and a big hello to the Grape Nation audience.
I welcome you back under two circumstances. We were talking off air. I think this is the third time you sat with us to help us with our holiday picks and recommendations. And you've also been a guest on the Grape Nation and, sat with me, I think, a couple times. So I thank you for all that. As always, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. For guys who do what you do, this is the busiest, craziest time of the year. And thanks for helping our listeners with their holiday wine and bubbly picks. All right, so let's get right into it. I may have asked you this question last year, and I think you have your finger on the pulse of this. Do people shift their drinking preferences during the holiday season? And use Le Bernardin and the wine bar, two great circumstances. Is it the seasonality? They move to red. Is it the festive part? They move to bubbly. I mean, do you see that?
I see yes and no. I never really judge that. I try always when I go to a table, I look what they want and I try to feel them out a little bit and listen to them. And no table is the same. And we see this more in a post-pandemic era. Things are shifting, preferences are shifting, trends are shifting in a sense.
Tell me, I agree. And, I see that. What are the obvious ones? What are some of the shifts and trends that really have settled in?
Well, we have a demand of Burgundy. We always had a demand of Burgundy, But now we have even a demand on Burgundy even in the private dining rooms, which is always interesting for us.
Why is that? It's the least accessible, most expensive wine in some cases.
Yeah, what one would think. But on the same token look, it's the same thing back in the, look in the champagne, how champagnes evolved. Before people drank the large houses. Then all of a sudden, people brought one or two grower champagnes. What is that?
Now,
look at this where we are now. People want that too, right? So it's really a phenomenon to see that. And, people educated themselves, which is actually wonderful to see. Lots of sommeliers, we do our hard work and, spread the word. And,
you said something interesting. When you go to a table, you'll read the people, which is the best thing because you're not imposing what you think they want to drink. Are people more inquisitive? Like, what should I do? Are they more informative? Like, hey, I like red but lighter. I don't want to spend more than two. Are people, do you have to pull that out of people or are they coming in? Is that one of the trends where they're more informed?
Every table is very, very different. And,
right.
I have many liberties in life, but judgment is not one of them.
Okay.
So, and I actually enjoy that. Every table is different. Every circumstance is different. Just because one client came the week prior and comes back to, it can be a totally different circumstance, The previous week he was here with a business client. This week he comes with his wife. It's a total different ballgame, right?
The wine selection, just because of the circumstance.
Also, how the dynamics run on the table, right? Of course, when he's working, he's on, right? When he's with his wife, I would assume he's probably a little bit more relaxed.
Right.
I would hope so.
Everyone knows Le Bernardin is arguably the best, one of the best restaurants in the world, not to mention a focus and specialty with seafood. Does that point towards the cellar being heavier with whites or not necessarily?
I see in the wintertime a little...
That was my next question. Go ahead.
I see in the wintertime a little increase in red wines. There's no doubt about it.
Hardier, colder?
Yes. Now, of course, in midst of August, when we New Yorkers have all the beautiful humidity and heat in here, people gravitate more towards white wine. That's logic, right? But look, Eric often helps us on the wine side to give us a little bit access to red wines as well.
Right.
Because you look ultimately for something complete. Having an 8-course tasting menu with white wine only, it's obviously a logic, very traditional choice. But I think, if you have some red wine sauces on a fish or mushroom-based sauces.
Sometimes it's the sauce and not the fish, which is
most
kind of neutral. Right.
Most of the time.
So you pair to the sauce.
Correct. I look at that, right? And or how is the fish basically prepared? Is it seared or is it poached? It's a totally different preparation. That gives me access. And we look at that just to complement that because, look, technically, old school wise, we might be 100% right. But on the same token, we have to have a glass of red wine or two for the soul.
But I agree. That's what comes out of the kitchen and what logically pairs the best with that. But don't ask for red.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a crap. Like, I'm not going to drink the wrong red with the wrong food, but I'll experiment a little and go out of my comfort. So they'll dictate what you carry too, right?
We do the same, but I ask them about their preferences. Look, sometimes people order, with a poached halibut, they want to have a big Napa Cab. And look,
will you let them go, or you'll say, before you do that?
It depends on the circumstance, right? Again, when you work for such a long time in a restaurant and with people, you get a little bit of an experience to read the situation.
Your experience.
Right? So depending how I read the situation is I look at one thing. Is he open or is he not open?
Right.
Right? If I feel he's open, I said, look, we're going here very strong towards fish. That might be a tick too rich. But obviously, again, if you prefer rich wine, then by all means.
Right. I hear you, but I want to try it.
Not I want to try it. It's just I want to provide you the best possible service I can give you. But forget it. People often ask me when they sit at the table, I give them two choices. I used to, as a young sommelier, you have a tendency often to put, and again, I speak of myself, to be very passionate about certain wines and then almost impose this onto the client.
Right.
Because you're passionate. But that client might not be into these wines at all, just because you think it's super trendy. So what I do right now, and I have this question all the time, right? So I give them 3 recommendations, but then the client says, which one do you like better?
Right.
And what
do you do with that question?
And I say, I'm completely irrelevant because I'm not sitting with you here. Look, if you
force them to make the decision. I give
them the decision. Look,
right.
If you like a light, crisper wine, this is your choice. If you like a bit richer, more on the oakier side, that is your wine. And if you like the wine in between.
But you didn't answer the question, what do you like? You just, enlighten them a little more to make the decision, which is really what you should do.
What I like is completely irrelevant, right?
You're not irrelevant, but in this case, it is completely irrelevant.
Just because I like sea urchin doesn't mean everyone has to love sea urchin. Right.
I agree. People forget that champagne is wine. I mean, it's wine and then they throw a few bubbles in there. I'm guessing that the cellar carries a lot of champagne for two reasons. One, it's maybe one of the best wines, but it's also very compatible with the menu here. Is it a large champagne selection compared to, the rest of the other wines, and, even compared to the city?
It's such an interesting question, because here's one thing I always observe. Look, in America, on a broad scale, we use champagne as an aperitif, or at the end with the chocolate cake, the toast.
Celebratory.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is an absolute, actually, this greatest disserving you can do to your champagne.
Agreed.
Because that chocolate cake will destroy
That's right.
pretty much anything, right?
So funny.
Especially every champagne. So for all the listeners, don't do this. You can order Prosecco too, and you will have the same experience. It'll be a
We're
much
gonna
richer
get into
version.
that.
But that being said, I think, people finally, with the grower champagne movement, people pick up onto that champagne is much more than just a wine with bubbles.
So it's making headway to that point.
Oh yeah, but also you'll see one thing, especially with Edley Bernardin. If you want to have one wine which basically gets you through an entire meal with one bottle, champagne will be the answer.
I agree.
And they're so versatile, right? Whether you like a Blanc de Blanc, or you like a Blanc de Noir, or you like
Even
a
an all Meunier.
Correct. So it's different styles. You can play with that. So that's super, super easy to work with. And again, our food is just perfectly for that.
Right. So that plays into what I asked you. I mean,
And you don't
it's
have to
important to the food. It's important to have the selection. I'm going to read you my next line question verbatim, which plays into what, although champagne should be drunk all year long, right? Don't be chocolate cake celebratory. Don't wait for the end of the year, New Year's or whatever. 'Tis the season. We're in the season where champagne makes total sense. All right, so this is where I need recommendations from you. Give me a few of your favorite champagne recommendations. And in doing that, think of a lot of things. Quality to value, mid-priced, expensive, whatever you want. Grower, big house, compatibility. Give me. I'm not asking you to pick favorites or whatever, but whatever resonates. Give me some style. You're drinking more Meunier, whatever. Tell me a few things to my listeners.
When you talk about champagne, ultimately you're catering immediately to a high-priced segment, because champagnes ultimately come in a higher price range, which sadly has even increased in the last couple of years significantly. That being said, but I'm going to do something also more accessible at the end. For me, if you go to a house, to me, no house is basically more quality-oriented and focused than Röder. Louis Röder, to me, is a small, but really, really respected house.
Biodynamic.
That on top of it, and oddly enough, when I was there in 2012, I believe, on a champagne trip, and oddly enough, we asked about 10 different growers which champagne house they respect the most.
Röder.
Unanimous. Everyone said the same. And you know what you have to do to get from 10 farmers the same opinion.
That's crazy.
That is
that's the true testament. Well,
right.
their winemaker ain't bad, JBL.
So just even the regular collection is, to me, absolutely great.
But I was going to say, you have Cristal down to the number 251, 252, which isn't priced badly.
No, it's actually priced very competitively.
Yes.
And you get a ton of value for it. Now, of course, look, all of us want to drink Cristal. It's maybe not doable, but I would say once in a lifetime you should have had one Cristal to taste, but also the Rosé. Because people often go just for the white. Or if you go to growers, it's not a big secret, I'm a huge Charton-Taillé fan. Still delivers a lot of value for your dollar.
Yes.
Just a regular Saint
Anne. And I drink it.
And what I love about Alex Charton is he looks into single vineyard specifics. And I find this so admirable. And it takes even his own brand prints it even smaller and highlights the single vineyard, right? Whether that's RTBs, whether it's Le Bar, and so on and so on. Then, for me, New Year's Day is always, as an Austrian, you always listen to the Viennese Philharmonics, to the New Year's concert, and have a little tartar with it. I always have Pierre Peters. Blanc de Blanc, just austere,
Another
lean,
maker that makes some good quality to value,
yes.
not up through the roof.
He's a house, but a really, really good producer. That's another one. I think Bank for the Dollar, La Herde Frère. It's not 100% super discovered out there yet.
I agree.
And certain but really delicious wines, and you get a ton of value for your dollar. And then,
so wait, those are all good ones. I don't want to confuse people.
To add one more, because I think one has to be a little bit respectable also to a lower budget wines. I actually would almost step out of it, of France, and go to one producer which I've observed for many, many, many years, is Pepe Raventos.
Yes.
Down in Catalonia.
He's been on the podcast.
He stepped out of it, of the Cava Dio, and makes his own sparkling wines. And, they're dealing for, you can buy them for $22.
I know.
And to me, that is basically the idea of a grower champagne outside of Champagne. If you want to step up on him, try his other vineyards, then you're absolutely in that category. And that is typically rare to find.
I know. Very highly regarded.
So that's a $23, $25 retail bottle of sparkling wine.
And I think he's organic or bio.
100%.
Not that that's the theme, but that's very thoughtful farming. And who doesn't want that?
He's real.
Yeah, that's what
the guy's real.
All right. So that answers my question. If you want to expand your palate outside of Champagne, Raventos pretty much goes to the top of the list.
But just one choice.
Give me.
You know what's actually also interesting? If you go, these wines come more and more and more from Luis Perez, the winery down in Andalusia.
Yeah.
He actually makes now interesting sparkling too. And he has his own Solera, obviously, by him. So that's something to look out for, right?
People know Raventos because he's so good and he makes a decent amount.
But that's really niche.
Yeah, that's why I have you here. Regionally, should be. You look at Valdebuena Prosecco or Alsace Cremant, or is there anything that's
Cremant is always a very obvious
good choice.
Good choice.
Okay.
Many of them are very, very good. You could also go actually. What's a little lesser known here yet is how much sparkling wine is now produced in Germany and Austria. Sekt, yeah.
Right.
And really tasty.
And the quality is going to be good because from a good maker.
Stephen Bitterloff, for instance, did a phenomenal job with the Lauer sparklings.
Yes.
He's so good.
Lauer's terrific. Let any guy like that make a sparkler.
Right. Or if you go to Austria, Brunelmeier is one of the authorities there. Now you can also go to Gobelsburg, go to Fred Leumer, more accessible. Again, there's a ton of...
Those three for sparklers?
Yeah. Those are institutions. But
I know they're all good with their still wines. I just wanted to make sure.
There's another guy who is really interesting. He makes pet nut. Now, people are often divisive about that, but to me, actually...
Well, so once fermented, right?
Yeah, but Fuchs und Hase, the fox and the rabbit, it's actually really, really interesting pet nut, yeah.
That's a good one. All right, tell me this. Recommend to me a splurge champagne. Now, I'm going to ask that question two ways. It's New Year's Eve. For some reason, you have a crazy budget to buy whatever you want, or you have a real rich friend who says, tell me, what's that? And then if someone's sitting in the restaurant and they really tug at you and say, Aldo, no boundaries on this, recommend a splurge champagne. So what's a restaurant pick and what's a personal pick? And I think it comes down to style or your experience drinking these guys. The answer isn't like Salas. Could be.
See, it's a very hard question to answer. Here's why.
I have more trouble with you with questions like that because you're so analytical and thoughtful. Other people just answer it.
No, I know, but here's the dilemma. If you like this kind of richer, more creamier versions of champagne, Celos is your answer, right? Or is an answer. You could also easily go
So
to a
very
club.
illuminating that it's not that simple because of style.
No,
I'm
champagne
not
has,
going to give you a style that you probably wouldn't like.
champagne has this kind of deep breath from lean to more rich. So Celos could be, or you could also do a Clos d'Ambonnet from Krug if you want, if you like it more focused, more precise. Cristal is definitely the answer, right? So it's a wide thing. Or you could go to a Beresh also,
Right.
right?
So the real answer is, like you said, it runs the range of style, and producers make different styles, and you really have to match up to that. But to your credit, you mentioned 3-4 producers. So I think you check that box.
Again, there you read the client and who's in front of you. Someone who
Right.
just wants to have a splurge.
Just because you like Salas because it's a big swinging fun. This guy, the last thing is Salas.
Yeah, they might be-
reductive or oxidative or neither.
Can be both, depending
Okay.
on, again, that's what's the
People
complicated
love that or
part.
hate it. Don't give it to the wrong guy.
Correct.
Right.
So, but if someone wants to splurge, you can give him a Dom Perignon too.
Right.
And they'd be thrilled because he knows and sees a brand.
Stylistically and the brand.
Right.
All right, those are good ones. I didn't mention. I'm going to post all these answers.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Now, if
very
I
thorough.
splurge, I probably go to a Beresh.
That's your splurge.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Like a
which
Cremant.
Gresh-
Like a Camon, right? Or like the new Ambonnet. I like those champagnes quite
Why?
a bit. There's a concentration, there's a focus onto it. I like
you
Beresh.
personally like.
100%. You get a certain richness, but not too much. But it's still so laser focused.
If you can recall a bottle of that retail wise, what range are we looking at?
Several $100s.
It is that high.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say maybe 3-4. So that's a real splurge.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
answer. All right. I'm going to give you a few holiday situations, and I want you to recommend a wine. Okay. I hate to do pairings and all that, but we're at that point of the year. All right. First, you got a big charcuterie board laid out in front of you. All types of cheeses, stinky, hard, soft, cow, whatever. Okay. So there's a variety. Cured meats, prosciutto, speck, salami. Who knows what else? Olives, crackers.
I have
and
the
all
answer
that.
already.
What am I? And it's not just it's anything. Champagne, sparkling.
The answer is
What are we doing?
Lambrusco. There's no question
Lambrusco?
about it.
I love you for that answer.
Will cover
Perfect for that.
Now,
right?
of course, obviously, if you come to Le Bernardin, that's not going to happen. But
No, but
that's
we're not talking about that.
No, but I think, but you come to the wine bar, it will happen because that's another style of wine which is absolutely delightful with that type of crazy foods.
It
And you know what?
covers the salami to the cheese.
And you know what? You actually will respond as a result also as a consumer very differently because these things work like a synergy together. You could have also, a big Napa Cup with it. And yeah, the charcuterie is great, the cheese is great, but both really don't communicate with each other.
So here's my issue with that. I am such a big fan of Lambrusco, and I think that's the perfect answer. I think a company named Riuniti came into the States 30, 40 years ago, and I think it was a Lambrusco, and it wasn't great. And people remember that, and they either loved it, hated it, but it's not a good example. There's also a lot of cheaper Lambruscos. Is there something that's accessible, that you see in retail or whatever? Give me a couple of Lambrusco, because people go, that sounds great. What do I look for?
Cleto Chiarlo is a super, super good producer.
Okay.
Because I think there's a certain earthiness onto it. But again, he has a wider range, right? But I wouldn't overthink. The beautiful thing in Lambrusco is one thing. Just because you had 20 years ago a terrible experience, this is the same thing when I bring it today into Beaujolais.
Oh, I agree.
How many great
did that with Riesling?
How did that took off, right? Or the same thing with Muscadet. Muscadet has a terrible reputation in France, right? I actually
It's
thought
one of the best value white wine.
great, right? And the age also incredibly well. So I think we have to get out of this thinking, right?
I'm glad you kind of not corrected me, but set people straight, about Lambrusco.
You have to taste, right? Just because you had once a terrible experience,
All right, here's my second question. You got the classic Hanukkah meal. It's kind of a brisket, a braised meat with potato latkes, a little greasy but flavorful, onion in it. Give me something that would go well with that. The meat's pretty heavy and saucy.
That's a tricky one, and here's why. And I worked on this topic quite a bit this year. How do you explain a normal consumer what to pair this with? And I look, it's a fairly rich dish in terms of the fat element.
Both.
Right?
Fatty, the latke,
Correct.
and the beef is
Correct.
fattier cut.
Now look, wine freaks will probably look for something immediately with acidity, right? Like a Beaujolais we just talked, right? Me personally, I would talk to a normal person because they don't like these wines from begin with because it's too light for them. Why don't you pick a Zinfandel? Something American, right? Where it's richer. Use a Bedrock, use a Buckland. Those are producers. Yeah, but those are producers which are really, really great.
So
Right? And it
Zinfandel,
works.
An American Zinfandel
Yeah.
would work well. Perfect. Fine.
I don't want to say what grows together goes together, but it's kind of,
I get that. I would match that, and I always wonder, is this right or wrong? I'm glad you validated that. Finally, the traditional Christmas meal, spiral ham, standing rib roast, whatever else, all the great sides. What's, you're backed against the wall and you got to come up with a wine or two. What are you thinking?
You're not going to like me. Champagne. That is your answer. It's festive.
I'm not going to like you. I'm going to jump across the table and kiss you. You put that discussion earlier into action.
Yes.
It's just everything out there.
It's festive.
The appetizers, the main stuff.
Just make sure you don't run out of champagne.
Right. Don't.
That's the only.
You got this huge meal. You're sitting there for a couple hours. Don't bring one bottle out.
Yeah.
Good
And
point
don't let
there.
the bottle sit on the table. Put it back into the fridge so it stays cold.
Perfect. I love that answer. All right. If you had $50, or if you recommended to somebody 50, and had to buy one wine gift for a friend, what are you doing at 50? And I'm not saying corkscrew, which you could answer that, but what would you buy them? 50 is a sweet spot. It's not too cheap and it's not crazy, and you can get good stuff. You can give me category, maker. You're not forced into any one type of answer. What comes to your mind?
I will buy them a book.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of books out this year. I remember you were on for Wine Simple. Pascaline just wrote a book, 1,000 Vines.
There's a ton of books.
Kelly White, yeah.
Kelly White, for instance,
The
interesting
guy
book.
from Noble Rot wrote a book.
Yeah.
But, I forget something with
An all-time favorite, Wine Folly.
Wine Folly.
She's great.
So I love that answer. Yeah, she is great. All right, so for $50, it doesn't have to be a bottle of wine. All right, finally, we got to wrap up because we got to get you out of here. What are you doing for the holidays? I think we talked about this off air. You're sticking around.
I have stick in my two homes. One of them is in Brooklyn. The other one is here in Midtown Manhattan.
Okay.
Alderson Wine Bar and Le Bernardin.
That's it.
There's not far in between.
What?
There's not much more.
We talked about this great restaurant and all these things to drink. I'm just curious, what do you do for New Year's Eve?
For New Year's Eve, we're closed, actually.
Okay, so that gives you a shot to do or go. So have you done the same thing through the years, or?
Yeah, it depends. It's every year it's a battle between me and management, my wife.
Right, the boss.
Because typically we always go to our caviar supplier in the
Do they
late
have like
afternoon.
a little party, or?
Yeah, and it became a thing for a couple of years ago. And I bring a ton of champagne. They have the vodka in the ice bucket. And it's just something. It's just you hang out with friends,
So
and we
it's
have a blast.
people because they're there, but it's also the most festive stuff: caviar, champagne.
Yeah, but it's just. For me, it's
Aldo,
you
I'm
want to hang
very-
out with people who
Right.
you
I'm
enjoy.
very jealous of that answer.
And you forget
Well,
about the time. Now, if management is going to win, we're going to go somewhere. 2 years ago, I think we went to the Polar Bar, which was great fun too,
spot.
right? No, it was fun. Right?
Festive, great room.
So it depends.
So either like a cool destination
Yeah.
or just hovering over some caviar.
Yeah.
Not bad answers.
And one actually gets me to bed by 11 o'clock at night, and the other one much later.
Okay, so it depends on how you feel.
After the season, I always vouch for number one.
And then you mentioned to me before we turn the mics on that after the new year, you'll be at the Cayman Cookout.
Yes.
Which puts you under the sun a little, but still running around and working. So at least you try to have some fun with that.
After my team says, "Oh, so cool, you're going to the beach." And I said, "Yeah, why don't you go with your boss a week long onto the beach? Let's see how long that is going to be fun."
Really. All right, we got to wrap up. That's Aldo Sam, and we thank him for all his great recommendations.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Aldo. I'm here with Yannick Benjamin, founder of Wheeling Forward, Wine on Wheels, and proprietor of Beaupierre Wines and Spirits, a barrier-free wine shop in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. He opened along with his wife, Heidi. How long ago was that?
November of 2022.
Okay, so we're a couple-year anniversary.
Oh, yes, exactly, yes.
All right, Yannick, thank you again for joining us for our holiday wine and bubbly recommendation show. Thank you for that. You've also been a past guest. You always have a lot going on, so we always have you on when things are happening. So welcome back to the Grape Nation. All right, one of the reasons I come to talk to you is the first one is obvious. You know I love you. But you're in a unique position to make recommendations for this podcast because sommelier, retailer, restaurateur, so you have a perspective is deeper than anybody. So based on those three platforms, as the seasons change and the holidays approach, and I think that's what you're gearing up for, what shifts in drinking are you seeing? People's habits, what you guys are recommending, at the restaurant, which is still there, and retail here. So tell me like some trends or, shifting into the holiday.
Well, I mean, I definitely think that people want to be guided in the best possible way. They want to be guided, but they also have a tremendous amount of information and they're asking all the right questions. But they're like, hey, they give you the right questions, but they also are expecting you to just kind of show them like a little exciting producer that they may not know about, or an exciting new grape or an emerging region that they're not aware of. And that's the feeling that I'm getting. I also know that I feel that people are looking for wines that are maybe slightly lower in alcohol, more of this vibrancy and energy, less oak. And I don't think people are even asking for that kind of style, but based on the descriptions, that's what I'm getting as far as trying to help them find the right match.
A lot of that points towards more thoughtful wines, low intervention, small family.
Yes.
I mean, that segment is getting more attention and more. I don't want to tag it as natural wine, but that's what it's pointing towards. Something interesting you mentioned is, because, we were talking about off air, how many podcasts, how long we've been doing it. It seems like the consumer is a little more educated now. They used to be very intimidated by somms when they walked into retail. They're like, what's going on? You're saying they're more prepared.
I think they're unbelievably more prepared. I think that's due to, we should be very grateful for all these social media influencers, for better or for worse, whatever your thoughts are. But I think they have a very powerful impact. All the podcasts, people like yourself doing this kind of work, YouTube videos, the access of education is there. And so people are prepared and they're asking like incredible questions that sometimes I don't even have the answers to. And they're giving me something to think about.
I think per se, social media in the wine category has had positive effects.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of discovery, a lot of personalities, have taken to the space. There's great recommendations, peer recommendations. All right. So let's get into it. Let's help our listeners. We're in Beaupierre, the wine and spirit shop. If somebody comes in to the store with no clue, but you've kind of, changed the thinking on that. They have some clue, but they're deferring to you, needs a few holiday gifts. Think about these three breaks. What are you recommending for $50? Give me $100. Give me $200. Now, the 100 answer could be two of the 50s you said in the first thing. But get interesting here. Get fun, because this store has that range.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, generally speaking, of course, if you're coming in here and you're looking to want to spend a little bit more money, I'm going to definitely guide you to producers that really have had an impact on me from like an emotional moment, right? So like Domaine Jamais from Côte Rôtie. These wines are not
Jamet.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the great Syrah
One of the
makers.
great. I mean, they're unbelievable, and I think these wines just completely over deliver. It's one of those producers when you give me a glass of that, I know what it is, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've had those wines. I'm very lucky to, but I wish more people can have those wines and fully understand, because here in America, it's funny, like most people when they try Syrah for the first time, when it's done in that style, they go, "Oh my God, this is magical." But I still think that there's this kind of the stigma of Syrah, and it's still a hard sell.
Like
It's not-
Riesling in another way.
Yeah, and it's still like a hard sell. So certainly, like I would definitely push that, kind of like agenda without a doubt.
Now, I've bought Jamais on the lower end.
Yeah.
What Jamais pricing can start at what for some of the other?
We're going up in that kind of 150 range, for sure. So it's
But isn't there like cheaper Jamais?
they have. You're talking about the Côte du Rhône that they do too. So it's still not cheap. You know what I mean? I
Right.
think now it's probably like in the 70, 80 range. But even like to my left, I have a wonderful producer here. It's called Jérôme Despesse, Despesse from Cornas, and is actually he's
A
like
white?
It's
Or
a red. It's
it's a red.
100% pure Syrah from Cornas, and he his full-time job, I think it still is. He was selling corks, so he's a cork salesman. That's how he was making ends meet.
How old or how long has he been making wine?
He inherited from his parents.
Oh, okay.
But
He's been around
but
it.
it's small, it's tiny, that he needs another job. And so he's making like less than 200 cases, and this is $69. And I love these wines. So it's a really good alternative. This is something that's really cool because you're not going to find it anywhere else, really.
That's a good story. How'd you come across this maker? I mean,
So the importer, Patrick Allen, who I think is a tremendous guy. He focuses mostly on like wines to the south of France. It's very niche. And I remember I said, oh my God. And he also made, Jérôme Despesse also makes a really wonderful Côte du Rhône too, so a good alternative too, if you want, as far as price point, but they're hard to find, to be honest with you.
all right. So I think the Jamais covers the higher end. I think the Despisse covers the middle.
Yeah.
Now, what about great quality to value bottle? Give me 50 or under, anywhere tickling around
I'm
there.
going to tell you right over here. You were just talking about the category of natural wines, but I remember having this wine in a restaurant called Clamato in Paris.
Oh, yeah, famous.
So to be honest with you, just to let all your listeners know, how I discover a lot of wines is when I go to a restaurant and I just tell the sommelier or whoever's there, I give them the green light. Give me something that you think I haven't had. We might talk.
I do too.
That's
And
totally
you
what
and
it is.
I obviously would recommend people to put their
Ex-
faith almost entirely
Exactly.
right into the
Ex-
Somme.
Exactly. And so that's what I like to do, generally speaking, right? And that's how I discover these wines. So me and Heidi, my wife, we were in Paris, plane got delayed, and we were like, oh, great. So we'll have lunch at Clamato. So we go to Clamato, and they were pouring this by the glass. Johan Moreno, young producer, Languedoc-Roussillon, Grenache, and
100% Grenache?
it's
Or mostly?
Grenache mostly, yeah,
Predominant.
exactly. And I just was blown away by how good it, and I must have had like 6 glasses of this. I was just because I was in the moment. I'm in
Right.
Paris. I'm having the best.
It's perfect.
And I said, I've got to figure out how to get this wine in the States. And fortunately, they had just come in just when I was asking about them. And it's $28. It's very reasonable. It's a low intervention.
That's why I'm here. Now,
You know-
Moreno is the producer.
Moreno, yeah,
Spell.
Johan Moreno. Moreno.
It sounds.
But
Okay.
I think it's fantastic.
That's a great reco.
Yeah.
I didn't mention, but I'll post these. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I can email it to you. Yeah.
all right. So those are good ones. I want to jump to what's obvious, and that's champagne.
Yes.
If people just want champagne, let's start with, in your mind, in this store, best quality to value champagne.
For me personally, it's the work that he's doing in Champagne, and it's François Huret, Hure.
Hure.
And I think
I don't hear that a lot.
I love his champagne.
Okay.
But I think, what's really important, of course, I have a bias because I think he's just a tremendous human being. He's such a
But
great
that's why I'm asking you, because I trust,
Yeah.
you don't have to disclaim all
No,
that.
yeah.
all the time.
But I think he's doing a fantastic.
Is he considered a grower?
He's a grower, yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
And Blend wise, is he working with all three grapes?
he's
is he
working with all three.
focusing
He's
on
working all. He's
Meunier,
working on.
let's say?
Yeah. He's working on all three grapes. I mean, talking about Pinot Meunier, one of the best producers for me, and I think you can find some at pretty reasonably priced, is by Christophe Mignon. Mignon. I went to visit again. Just tremendous work that he's doing, and it's absolutely stunning. These wines.
So what we're talking about is there's three grapes usually blended in Champagne: Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, which through the years was blended less and not, you know, on the forefront. Now there's guys like Christophe Baron who only make Pinot Meunier. It's funny. So that's a good reco. All right. So for our ballers, baller listeners, give me a splurge champagne. Worth the money.
Yeah, worth the money. I would listen. I think for me, if you had to ask me like the one champagne that I would spend money on, and I would say he makes a couple of them, but pay attention, Frederic Savart, Savart, and I'm telling you, his wines are just unbelievable. And then we have one over here, George Laval as well,
right? The Cumier,
all that, and he it's a different style in many ways.
What is the style?
I find the wines from Savart to be more in this kind of reductive, kind of Burgundian style, and I feel that the Laval ones are but a bit more generous, a bit more fruit driven. That's my personal.
So two great producers, two different style or approaches.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so whatever sounds
and for me, both of them are wines of emotion, without a doubt.
All right, so staying with bubbly, but moving away from champagne, what are some other sparkling wines worth looking into?
I would say this producer called Domaine Parigot, Parigot. And they are in Burgundy, in the village of Savigny-le-Bon. They're making a fantastic rosé and Crémant de Bourgogne, absolutely stunning.
It's a sparkler.
It's a sparkling. It's a sparkling.
And it's a Pinot Noir base.
Yeah, but it's made in the same method traditionnel that you would find done in Champagne, but only in Burgundy. And they're stunning. I think it's a great, and they're fifth generation. So definitely something to look out for the holiday season, where you're going to also save quite a bit of money.
Give me something that you like. I'm going to push you out of the border, out of France.
Well, I went to visit not too long ago in the Val d'Obiadene region,
Italy.
In Italy, yeah. And it's called Sorel Branca. And they make some of the most incredible Prosecco. But this is not the Prosecco that...
That's the grape Sorel Branca?
No, that's the producer. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The grape here is Glera.
Okay.
But they're in, the Val d'Obiadene.
What differentiates, you were going to say?
I think for me, it's got a bit more of this kind of floral, kind of a freshness to it. But the price point is absolutely stunning. It's correct. It's usually around $25.
Wow. And it ain't your grandma's Prosecco.
And it's definitely not it's not the Prosecco that I would say, hey, you could splash some peach nectar or orange juice in it.
All right. That's a good one. So far, so good. I thought I'd have to smack you around a little to get some good answers from you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk food and wine now.
Yep.
Give me a Hanukkah wine recommendation for the typical brisket and potato latke dinner. If you had to pick one or two wines with that.
Listen, I think what's really incredible, what's happening unfortunately, there's a lot. It's a hotbed of like craziness, in the Middle East. But I think, why not have some fun? You know what I mean? And why not bring one wine from Israel, one wine from Lebanon, and just let's show some solidarity to this incredible part of the world, because this is the birthplace of wine civilization. So I would do something like that. Now, there's this wonderful wine called Cremison. They make both a white and a red that I absolutely adore.
Is that in Israeli?
That's in Israel. I mean, it's in the West Bank. It's called CREMISAN. And usually you find something, under $30 for Cremison. Highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. If you can also find this amazing Israeli producer, he's out in the Galilee. It's called Shvo, SHVO.
You and I drank a bottle the last time you were in the studio.
Exactly.
SHVO.
Yeah, and he makes an incredible Chenin Blanc, one of the best Chenin Blancs outside of France. And then finally, listen, in the Bekaa Valley, it is, listen, we're talking about the
underrated, underappreciated, underknown wine.
Yeah, and I think
some people.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about there's Musar, of course, they're like one of the great ones. But then you have Kerfaya and then Messiah. This is a place. It's my dream to go visit there. If I had one wine region where I could just go and visit and spend some time, it's there.
Valley.
Yeah, because this is the land of the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians are the ones that brought all this vinifera grapes to Europe. We have so much to thank them. These are seafaring people, so much to learn still.
I love that answer. Just because besides the wine, there's a lot more to it. And just so people should know, I mean, you're more than well-versed on Israeli wines and those wines from the region. You've worked with those guys. All right, let's shift to the classic sit-down Christmas meal.
Yeah.
Which could be a ham, a standing roast, tons of sides. Talk to me about a couple of wines there.
Yeah, so one of my favorite wines, and you actually came to the vertical tasting that we did. It's by Edouard Parinet from the Chateau du Moulin-à-Vent, right in Beaujolais. And their style is very different from your standard Beaujolais because they don't do whole cluster, right? Whole cluster is more of this kind of fruity, softer, fun style. I mean, it can be quite complex, don't get me wrong. But he's kind of vinifying his grapes as you would Pinot Noir. He wants these wines to age for decades. And I just think that if you can find even a bottle that's 5 years old, these wines are stunning.
So a little bottle age.
Yeah, a little bottle age. And you can find them. They're on the market and they're still reasonably priced. It's a red wine that offers a lot of complexity and depth, a little bite to it. It's got some tannins to it.
So there's 10 crus in Beaujolais?
There are 10 crus in Beaujolais.
Is Moulin-à-Vent?
Moulin-à-Vent is one of them.
Now, is that considered structurally one of the bigger wines or not necessarily, body-wise?
I mean, I think it's considered one of the ones that really can age. It's a very interesting terroir. It's a place that has, age worthiness is what I want to say.
I think the Beaujolais can cover the red part and it's not so heavy.
Yes,
where,
exactly.
You don't even need a white.
And you want to find something that's versatile too, right? Because remember, it's not just about you; it's about your guests also being there.
That's
right?
a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, it's a crowd pleaser.
All right, so let's wrap this up. What are you doing for the holidays?
Well, I've got a lot going on. I mean, we just had a conversation, and I'm not going to hold back. But I'm going to deal with the closing of Contento restaurant.
I didn't know whether you wanted to talk about
it's fine.
Contento, which was a restaurant up on 111th Street on the east side, opened 4 years ago to incredible acclaim. A very inclusive type of restaurant. If you know about Yannick, interesting cuisine,
yes,
Peruvian, great wine list.
Yes.
Sadly, after 4 years, you're in the process.
Yes. Yeah. We just announced it a few days ago. And
So
December
that's
24th.
part of what you'll be doing for the holiday.
That's what I'll be doing for the holiday.
You ain't going anywhere, I guess.
I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'll be traveling to Burgundy in January, taking a week there. And so that'll be sort of my vacation and just
That's your next big
but
trip.
the next 3-4 weeks will be go.
That was the other thing early on when you talked about the Jamais, you love to drink wines or, sell or talk about places you visited. Now, if you follow Yannick on Instagram, Yannick, what's your handle? It's at Yannick Benjamin.
Yannick Benjamin, yeah.
Okay, you'll see through time how this guy travels. And that gets him closer to the wines, which is very cool. So on a happy note, at least for New Year's Eve, what are you popping?
That's a great.
Have you thought about it yet?
I have not thought about it, but I will say this:
Give me some bullpen choices there.
But one of my favorite sparkling wines to drink, that's non-champagne, that I just find so fun. I visited them, and it's a very young couple doing a tremendous job. It's Domaine de Louvois,
Spell
Louvoy, and they're just south. They're completely north of Burgundy, but they just missed the border of being part of Champagne.
Really?
So
that sort of doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And they do a tremendous job. And because they're not within the Champagne Apple,
they could do what they want.
Delimited geographical area, the prices are cheaper.
That's great. That's definitely an interesting answer. All right, finally, we're in Beaupierre. If people say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, that store sounds cool. Can they call in to order stuff? Is there online?
Yeah.
Inform my listeners between now and the holidays how they can get to you.
They can definitely call us for sure, without a doubt. We can definitely deliver. And we also have our website that you can order through.
Okay.
And it's very easy to navigate.
Now, because we're approaching the holidays, what's a fair drop dead deadline, if they want to have stuff sent to their home?
There's no deadline. Just
just buy the crap.
Yeah, just buy it. We'll make it happen. I'm telling you.
All right. Listen, those are all great recommendations. I wish you the happiest and healthiest holidays. That's Yannick Benjamin, and we thank him for all his great recommendations.
Thank you.
I'm with Ryan Bailey. Ryan Bailey is a partner at Cato in Los Angeles. Ryan is also overseeing all the beverage and the business side of everything. He works with Chef John Yao. This is a highly awarded restaurant. The Los Angeles Times in 2023 selected Cato as its #1 restaurant. It's a Michelin 1-star restaurant recognized by the 50 best restaurants in the world and a lot of other different things. This will be an interesting interview because instead of doing it before dinner, I did it after dinner. And Ryan fed me with about, 12, 15 courses and about 10 pairings with wine. So keep that in mind. So Ryan is a native Californian. He spent a lot of time in California, in Sacramento. He decided to move to New York and worked with Daniel Hum and the Nomad people. He worked in New York for years and then headed back west to open the Nomad in Los Angeles, and then eventually hooked up with Chef John Yao, and the whole Cato thing started happening. Just give me a little history of the Cato beginnings.
Yeah, so Cato started in 2016 when John was 25 years old, a really small 900 square foot location in the West LA over by Sawtelle. It was John and a few friends to begin with, serving food that was inspired by his upbringing in the San Gabriel Valley here in East LA. After a few years, people started to recognize that it was pretty creative and really interesting food that, once again, was Taiwanese American and started to grow bit by bit from a couple of courses all the way to a tasting menu that Jonathan Gold really enjoyed and that Michelin eventually gave a Michelin star to, which was really surprising because at the time, beverage was pretty limited and service was pretty limited, and it was very culinary focused, but everybody was excited about the menus that they were experiencing there. We partnered a few years after that and looked for a new location throughout all of LA, looked at probably over 100 locations in 3 years. And back in 2022, ended up moving to the Arts District on the east side of downtown LA in a space called The Row, which is a historic building here. And we grew our team.
You know what this reminds me of? I don't know if you were there, but Industry City in Brooklyn.
Okay, yeah.
It's a collection of buildings with, on the lower level, some great restaurants from very high end to walk in and out, and then above some cool offices.
Yeah, so this building it's about 100 years old and was a historic property in the second largest produce market in the world for 80 years, actually.
So this was sort of the produce district in that sense. So a couple things about Ryan. I mean, Ryan's a sommelier. Ryan is... he's running one of the largest, if not, I think you told me the largest wine program in Los Angeles. I mean, over 3,000 selections. An interesting wine list that pairs with the food here. We talked about Chef John Yao. We talked about Taiwanese food. I just finished the meal and it seemed like it was Taiwanese. It seemed Japanese, it seemed Chinese, American. I mean, it's pretty diverse in that sense, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a Taiwanese restaurant.
Yeah, so John's grandparents were originally from China, and post World War II, you had a lot of people leaving China to Taiwan to settle after the change of the government, and so you have all these different provinces coming together, and their cuisines from those regions kind of coming together to make something very unique that also is inspired by Japanese cuisine, since Japan actually ruled Taiwan for a period of time. So you have elements of Chinese cuisine, you have elements of Japanese cuisine, and then you have the individual authenticity of what is Taiwanese cuisine itself too, added into the fact that John's first generation Taiwanese American and grew up in San Gabriel Valley, which is a huge and mixture community of Asian Americans, most of which settled in that valley, and that's once removed also adding to the inspiration of what comes out to be the dishes that are here at Cato.
So you and John have been working together for more than half a dozen years, even more. When you put the wine list together, you came from a traditional, nomad, that whole Daniel Hum thing is fairly traditional. Now you're kind of confronted with this very diverse and interesting wine list. Was that challenging to you? Did you have to pivot, or it was just everything I know, I'll work it into this? How did you approach that?
Yeah, so it's quite different. In the kitchens at the Nomad and I love Madison Park, you quite often hear Daniel Hume yell like, "This dish needs more acid. It needs more acid."
Did he know that much to say that?
Yeah. And he tastes things, and so the dishes were composed on incredible produce, the backbone of acidity. Whereas here at Cato, Taiwanese cuisine isn't really known for being built on acid. It's more on savory umami character. Right. It's more on incredible seafood. It's more on elements of spice. There's very low acid in the dishes, actually, because there's almost no citrus on the island of Taiwan. So when we are building out the beverage program here, both what Austin's doing behind the bar and what we're doing with the wine program is looking for beverages that are high in acid. So actually, steering away from things like sake and leaning more into wine in general, but then also varietals that are high in acid and styles that are high in acid. So things that are from cool climates, old world style, low oak usage, low alcohol, and then things like champagne that are naturally high in acid, grape varietals like Chenin Blanc and
Which
Riesling.
Is everything you served me tonight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Starting with champagne to some great whites and all of that. Just sort of an ignorant, kind of silly thing. Sake is super low acid.
Yeah, it's definitely lower in acid than wine is.
Why do they serve it with sushi, which is a lot of seafood? Just because it's Japanese?
No, because you have that umami-ness to it.
And it works well with
it. It works very well.
You don't need acid. You need
that texture and that umami-ness, yeah.
All right, so another interesting thing, which I knew about you, but when you came out here, you brought your kind of love and expertise of champagne. When you opened Nomad, I said, one of the largest champagne selections around, and you said in the world, right? Champagne started gaining a lot of traction. Like in Mayalino, you would see like a pizza place that
Jeff
had
Kellogg,
like 40, 50, 60 champagnes, which was unexpected. It's a good segue into why I want to sit with you. And the setup is, I want you to talk to me about champagne, sparkling wines, and holiday wines. But first, there's nobody better than you to answer this. Why is champagne such a good wine for food?
Because it's high in acid. So if you have
acid is great with foods.
Yeah, if you have things that are fried, it works really well with fried foods. If you have things that are fatty, it works well with things that are fatty. If you have things that are rich and dense, it can help cut and break that down while you're consuming it. And then it it has a lot of different texture to it and variations in terms of sweetness. You can have bone dry all the way to like sweeter styles of champagne. So add that with the fact that you can also have rosé champagne, and now you have dry white and reds from the Champagne region as well, Côte de Champenoise. You have a lot of diversity, so you have a lot to work with.
So we want people to know that champagne is just not a celebratory beverage.
Definitely.
That it is a wine. It's a wine-based thing. It's incredibly food-friendly for all the reasons you just, explained. So let's talk about that. For the holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, going into New Year's, gift giving, dinners, and all of that. Let's talk about, give me some, and get specific here, give me some good, approachable, accessible, value-oriented champagnes. And you can go by the makers and all of that.
Yeah.
And this is your preference, and it's not like you're listing them, because you're not leaving anything out. You're just throwing a few suggestions out.
Yeah, the first bottle that comes to mind is Pierre Peter's Cuvée de Reserve. So if you're gifting this, receiving a bottle from a prestigious grower producer like Pierre Peters, and instantly wine people go, oh wow, Pierre Peters, that's great. These wines are becoming more difficult to come across at the top level, like his top bottlings, but the Cuvée de Reserve, which is his non-vintage Blanc de Blanc, to me is special enough to give and receive as a gift, but not so special that like you can't just open it up and enjoy it.
Right.
Sunday night dinner watching HBO kind of thing.
And not a crazy price.
Not a crazy price. This is something that, you're going to find for a handful more dollars than some of the larger estates and larger brands.
Right.
Yeah. But it is
more special.
But more special.
Right. And more thoughtful.
Yeah. And like I can find it in LA, you can find it in New York, but you could also probably find it in Texas and Ohio.
But don't forget
Washington.
online.
Yeah. And
you
online.
can go online anywhere and basically find anything. What's a good champagne? I think Pierre Peters would answer that, but what's another good champagne that maybe people haven't heard of or would impress, or is that a grower champagne? Tell people what a grower champagne is.
Yeah, so actually Pierre Peters is making the transition out of becoming a grower champagne due to size.
Is that true?
Yeah, for a long period of time was a grower.
Is that because you have to do that because you get called out, or
it's regulatory purposes?
It is.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's size limits to what you're farming. There's limits to what you're able to purchase from other vineyards.
So there's all these regulations and restrictions.
Yeah. So
that force him.
So a producer like Pierre Peters, who might be growing in popularity and have higher demand, might want to seek out vineyards that they don't own that are outside of their control to add more fruit to produce more wine, and or different grape varietals that are grape varietals that are outside of their domain from other incredible villages.
So then drop down for me. So who's like the new Pierre Peters, or who doesn't have to wrestle with that? Who's a good grower guy that's accessible, reasonable?
There's a producer that I really like. It's probably one of my favorite champagnes, Hubert Souriau. He does a bottling.
Spell.
Soreau, Souriau.
Okay.
And Hubert, Hubert. Yeah. But he does a bottling called Clos d'Aubert. So this is a single vintage wine. So he only produces this as a vintage champagne. It's a single varietal, Chardonnay or Blanc de Blanc, from a single village and an individual vineyard called Clos d'Aubert, which is a walled-in vineyard. It's pretty special in my opinion, and one of my favorite bottles of champagnes, and definitely something that's celebratory, but at a price point that hasn't quite broken through to like unobtainable, and a quantity that is definitely something that maybe you can't find on your corner store, but it's like you said, online and or through people. It's imported by Shotzi Wines here in the U.S. Kevin Bike is a very knowledgeable wine importer. Worked under Terry Thies at Skurnig for a very long time in the Terry Thies portfolio.
Terry was the Champagne and German guy, right?
And he worked right underneath him, and he brings in great German producers like Josie Leitz and those wines. But this champagne that's in a German portfolio kind of slips through the cracks, and I almost don't like to talk about it because I don't want it to become even harder to get, but it is definitely special.
I hate when you have to reveal
Yeah.
something that you want to keep close, to your heart or whatever.
Yeah, and stylistically, it's dry and it's bright, and I like it on warmer, riper vintages. But it also gets a little bit of texture, so it works by itself, but also, to pair with things in the glass and on the plate, I should say.
All right, so answer this for me. Give me a good splurge recommendation, but not so crazy as some crazy high-end Salas. Give me something that, $200, $300, $400, $500 or whatever. If somebody really wanted to go out and ball, whether it was for an anniversary or for the big gift, what would Ryan, throw out for that?
I think there's there could be a reputation of okay, you have a large list of champagne, you're geeky about champagne, it's all got to be grower producer. But to be honest, a go-to, very accessible and incredibly special wine that I really love is Krug. I love Krug. I love Krug Vintage. I love Krug Rosé. I love Krug Non-Vintage. Whatever edition is being released. When you talk about consistency,
I was going to use that word, consistency.
If you're spending that much money, you're hey, I'm putting out a couple $100 right here.
Can't go wrong.
You want to have the sure bet, and I think Krug is a larger producer that stylistically makes really, really enjoyable wines at a very high at a very high quality that is also very intentional, very thoughtful about everything that they do, and culinary wise work really well with it.
You know what I'm amazed with, Ryan? I talk to a lot of people and I ask them that question, and Krug comes up over and over. And you would think because it's sort of a house brand and a big brand and all that, it still has very high regard among people that really care about that stuff. And, that must mean something. All right, so let's move away from champagne. Maybe all of us are not big ballers or whatever, but they like sparkling wine. Let's talk about other sparkling wine options that may fit in for champagne at a Christmas dinner, maybe a Hanukkah dinner with latkes or brisket or whatever. I mean, what else should we be looking at?
I got a couple off the top of my head. In Oregon, there's a producer called Cho that makes some really enjoyable CHO.
Cho.
Okay. Husband and wife team.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, tiny production. They just actually have their own vineyard now. They were purchasing from other vineyards before, but small husband and wife team that make really good domestic sparkling wines. In Portugal, I lived there for a short period of time. Felipe Pato makes a incredible under $20 dollars a bottle retail sparkling wine called 3B, both in a kind of blanc de blanc, but also in a rosé style. That would be perfect for if you're trying to find diversity.
Portugal has great values across the board. Red, white, sparkling.
Yeah, sub $20 is amazing.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Peter Lauer is in Germany in the Mosel region. He releases a German sparkling wine, which is known as Sekt. That
SEKT.
Yeah. That is both non-vintage and vintage.
That's Von Boden, Peter Lauer?
Yeah, that's brought in by Steven Bitteroff from Von Boden, and those wines are really delicious, and you can get vintage Sekt, maybe even with some age to it, for the price of a non-vintage champagne. So there's some really great value in that as well.
All right, so finally, you're sitting down with friends and family, traditional holiday meal. It could be a Christmas meal, roasts, hams, all kinds of sides, maybe New Year's or whatever. You're going to be tasked with 3 wines, 1 champagne or sparkler and 2 other wines. Based on the kind of category of foods, what are you picking?
Ooh, okay. I'm picking a dry Riesling. And I usually probably would have gone German or Austrian before, but up in the Anderson Valley, Cole Ranch, winemaker there, Mike Lucia, makes an incredible Riesling from some of the oldest plantings of Riesling in California in the U.S.
Where in California?
So it's a single vineyard appellation called Cole Ranch up in the Mendocino Mountains, just outside of Anderson.
Cole Ranch is in Mendocino.
Yeah, Mendocino, okay. And that's really great. And his dry Riesling is super versatile.
So dry Riesling is one, Cole specifically.
Yeah.
Michael's.
Cole Ranch from Michael
Cole
J.
Ranch,
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. red wise, I'm probably going Syrah, some of the body and spice to it, from the Rhone Valley, from the Northern Rhone Valley, from one of my favorite winemakers, Jean-Louis Chauve. Now splurging, you go Hermitage. Not splurging, I'd say the Saint Joseph. I love these wines whether they're young, and I love them aged to them.
Tell me if you agree with me. If you go to Saint Joseph, I love Pierre Gonin.
Great wines.
Do you like them? I mean,
love
what
them,
else? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I love them. It's between Gonin and Chauve.
Chauve kind of is in their own category.
Yeah.
So you put Chauve there, and then who else? Gonin goes there. Who else?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like Alain Gros makes a little wine on Saint Joseph.
Yes.
Fleury makes some really great wines in Saint Joseph. Monnier Perriot makes incredible Saint Joseph. So any of those are really good.
All right. So that's two. You picked a Riesling. You picked the Northern Rhone. I asked you for three.
Yeah. And then let's think. I probably actually have my family, like my house, nobody really drinks champagne other than me. So I'd probably go like a Burgundy. I'd probably go Burgundy.
What?
Like a white Burgundy.
So you'd go white.
Yeah, we drink a lot of white wine at our house, so I'd go white Burgundy, and I'd probably do
a producer.
I'd probably do like an entry similar. I'd probably do an entry level white wine from a really good producer. I like Aligoté from Rouleau. I like the Aassi or like a Bourgogne Blanc from like Fichet, like just a really classic producer, say in Meursault, but a bottling that is like their Bourgogne Blanc and or their Aligoté bottling that you can get for $30 to $50.
Aligoté is in Burgundy, but it's a region that is what? North?
It's actually a varietal.
Varietal. I'm sorry.
So in Burgundy, you have Pinot Noir as the red varietal, and you have Chardonnay as the white. But there's additional varietal as Aligoté, and Aligoté is slightly more textural than Chardonnay. It can have different aromatics to it for a long period of time because it was more vinous and it produced more grapes on the vine. It was considered to be a lesser quality grape, but now, to be honest, like every single top producer in Burgundy that makes white wine, or not every, I should say, a majority of them have the Aligoté in their portfolio because it gives them something else to do.
Yeah.
Whether
I'm
it's
seeing more and more of it.
Yeah, and there's some really good old vine material there.
All right, so Ryan, those are great recommendations. I hope people take Ryan's advice and go out and buy some of those. That was Ryan Bailey. Ryan is the partner and wine guy at Cato. Cato is arguably, and I will attest to that because I just finished a meal, one of the best restaurants in the country, one of the best restaurants in the world. Certainly one of the best restaurants in LA. So Ryan, thank you for all those great tips, and I hope we can help some people make some educated selections.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the kind words.
Thanks. If you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods. Leave a review if you like the podcast. Also, please subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at @SBenruby and on Twitter X @BenRuby. I know those are two different handles, but you can always use the hashtag The Grape Nation to find us on both. We are on Facebook at The Grape Nation. I want to thank our guests Aldo Sohm, Yannick Benjamin, and Ryan Bailey. Thank you to our engineer Armin and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Benruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation.
The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.